today's session, I'm going to teach what is forecasting, its methods, what is the exact process of forecasting, and what are the its types, whether quantitative and qualitative, and what are its methods. So let's begin. So before I come up to the numerical example, it is good to know what is exactly forecasting. Forecasting is the process of predicting about the future based on the past and present facts or data. So it's just in simple words, I could say forecasting is a simple process of predicting about the future which are based on present or past data. So let's take an example that a researcher has to predict the next number in the pattern. So these are the three patterns which is given on the screen. So a researcher has to choose its own pattern or a own number which is for the pattern for the betterment of the future, which is relate to the past and present data. So it's given like 3.7, 3.7. So these are the values has been given. So we have a researcher has to predict the next number. So it could be 3.5, it could be 3.7 as well. When I talk about the second parameter, that would be 9.5 or could be 8.5 or could be 11.5. So a researcher has predicting the next number in the following pattern so that whatever the researcher has decided for the betterment of the future, it could goes ahead. So these are the results. The researcher has predicted the next number of all these three parameters, that is 3.7, 12.5 and 9.0. So these particular next number has been decided by the researcher just to predict about the future so that it could be used or it could assume for the betterment about the marketing strategies, about the sales volume, about the you can see the strategies for a new development of a product or a new product life cycle, could say. So that's the main reason the forecasting tool will be used for predicting about the future for the betterment of its own company, for the betterment for its own employees and employers. Let's talk about what is exactly forecasting. So it's a process just determine the future events based on historical facts and data. There are some major thoughts on forecast. The three major thoughts are forecast tend to be a wrong. It doesn't mean that the researcher whatever he forecast about its own organization, about its own new products, it could be absolute true or correct. We can't say that because forecasting is a predictable you can say event about the future. So that's why forecast tend to be wrong. Second thought would be the forecast can be biased. That's absolutely true. It could be you can say a wrong judgment. It could be a wrong facts also. For example, in case of marketing and sales, the marketing for a new product, the forecasting can be biased because it can be based on the wrong judgment. It can be based on the wrong opinion or an irregular opinions by the panel of experts. So it doesn't mean that whatever the forecasting relate to the marketing and sale, it could be absolute true. And whatever the outcomes would come related to marketing and sales for the organization, it couldn't be you can say true. That's why forecasting can be biased. Forecast tend to be better for a new future. That absolutely true. There are one of the you can say thought about the forecast is this tend to be better for a new future, that every organization has its main objective, whatever the organization think about for a betterment of the future about related to their employees, related to their own revenues, expenditure, as well as the profits. Why forecast? Why it is important to do the forecast? So it is better. Why it is better to have an educated guesses rather than about not to forecast at all, because in day-to-day lives, in day-to-day, a researcher has to think on various things like relate to the marketing, relate to the sales, relate to the a new product, relate to the packaging, relate to the transportation, relate to the new promotion techniques. So in everything, forecasting is better to do, as it is an educated guess about the future, about the betterment for any organizations and firm, rather than not to forecast at all. So this is all about an overview about the forecasting. Next is, what is forecasting? Is it's almost a practice tool about predicting what will be happen in the future by taking or considering the present and past facts or data. It is also a tool of a decision making, which also helps the business to cope up with the impact of the future uncertainty by examining or by investigating the historical data and trends. Of course, the basis, it is also a basis of all the business decisions. For example, production, inventory, manpower, resources, facilities related to the equipments, office, accessories, etc. And of course, the forecasting is an educated guessing rather than not to forecast at all. For example, there are two persons are sitting, two main, one is male and female, they are forecasting to each other, oh, that's a sale would be 1,200,000, the sales would be around 1 crore rupees. So this is all about the forecasting for the betterment of the future, that it could be true, then ultimately it's a profit and the bonus for all of the employers or employees of the company. So that is called forecasting. Why do we need to forecast? It is very important that every researcher has to forecast on various parameters, on various different things like weather, traffic, stock market, and the state of our company from different or various perspective. But in general, a researcher cannot say that it is almost or always be true. Sometimes forecasting are almost always be wrong as well. So these are the three, you can say, the main points, key points where the forecasting helps in the various perspective. The first one is forecasting helps to set goals and plan ahead. So instead of having or look into it, have it is always important to have an accurate data and statistics to analyze about the goals, about the plans that going to be used ahead in the future. And it also helps the businesses to decide what amount of change, what growth, what improvement will be determined as a success for an organization. And it could be success through the forecasting only, so that the company can evaluate everything or every perspective which are beneficial for them for a better progress. Second point would be the forecast helps businesses budget. It is very important that the budget always quantifies the expectations of the revenues and expenditure that a business wants to achieve over a period of time. And of course, the forecast is also be a different according to the expectations as well. So hence, forecast allow you to estimate the amount of revenue and income that is expected for the future period for the organization. Third one is forecast help anticipate change within the market. If whatever the change to be made in the market or in the upcoming market, or what could happen in the future, the forecasting will always help in making the better decisions, the better adjustments as well. Forecast is also help the business to optimize a new strategies and changes according to the current operation, so that whatever the possible or potential outcome would come, it can also be changed according to the forecasting by the panel of experts. So this is the three main concern where the forecasting need a lot. Importance of forecasting in operations management. It is very important to know that various departments in the organization, it always be depends on the forecast so that they can formulate and execute their plans. And of course, there are various departments like finance departments, human resource department, production departments, and there are sales and marketing department where everything to be decided about the future through the process of the forecasting. For example, the finance needs forecasting related to their project's cash flows and capital requirements. So what would be the cash flow, what would be the cash required for a product, and what would be the capital equipment would be required, so that whatever the revenues to be earned according to the forecasting only. Human resources also needs forecast to anticipate hiring needs. So whatever the recruitment and hiring procedure or strategies or the needs, it can be done through forecasting only. Even the most of the companies like Advent, there is a IT company Advent, there is a BPO, you can say the Wipro. So these are the companies where the forecast about the human resource department and how the hiring and recruitment process goes on. And accordingly, they will plan and hire the candidates who are very efficient and effective for their own organization. The next one is production department. Of course, the production is also need forecast to plan about the production levels, to plan about the workforce, what are the materials to be required, whether the in or opening or closing stock are actually available. If the closing stock is available, what would be the you can say the stock available to be sold about to be sold for the betterment of the future. So that is, and it can be done through forecasting only. So whatever the operations department in case of finance, human resource, production, sales and marketing, whatever they plan, whatever they formulate the strategies and execute their plan, it could be done through forecasting only. So forecasting is one of the most important tool in every department, in every organization. So what department in your university needs to forecast? The department that really needs about the university would be the finance department, because if the finance is available, so definitely the other departments will also work well and goes on for the betterment of the future. Next is to the continued version about the importance of forecasting in operation management. Of course, demand is not only the variable of interest to the forecaster. Of course, there are other parameters to be considered like manufacturers, vendors, you can see the wholesalers, all these parameters to be you can say even the service providers as well, where the forecast about the population, the other demographic variables like weather, environmental pollution, etc. And of course, there are also the one of the important variable, that is the manufacturers, who also forecast about their work optimism, machine availability, material cost, transportation, and production leads time. In every case, whether the manufacturers, whether the wholesalers, whether the recruiters, whether any service provider like insurance companies, mutual fund companies, they always forecast, they use the tool of forecasting about any variable, any social demographic variable, population related to the weather, environmental pollution. In every case, the forecasting is always be needed, and their work is always based on forecasting, which is also related to their past and present facts, and accordingly they will decide the plan for the future. Now we talk about the types of forecast based on time, or you can see the time horizon. There are three types: the short range forecast, medium range forecast, and long range forecast. So it's very simple to understand. If we talk about the short range forecast, it's usually less than the 3 months. It would be talk, for example, we talk about the shop scheduling, what would be the employees in or out time, what would be the time of the employers to come in to the office. Of course, the assignments of the worker, which always been decided within the 3 months or less than the 3 months, and that forecast would be the short range forecast. Second one is median range forecast, where the time period is always be 3 months to 2 years. Here we talk about the, you can say, the finance strategies. Here we talk about the sales and production strategies, as well as their planning to look forward about the increment in the sales and the production activities. So that's called the medium range forecast. Then last one is the long range forecast, where is more than 2 years. Here we talk about the new product development process. Here we talk about the new product planning. Here we talk about the packaging and transportation activities, which always take a long period of time. How the new product would get increased in the future, where the forecasting would be used, but it depends upon the time period, which always takes about the more than 2 years, and that's called the long range forecast. Every forecasting needs a detailed use of its own system and a design of its own system, how they plan up their strategies, how they plan up their, you can say, the assignments, how they plan up their own way of utilizing their own softwares and systems to, and accordingly they will forecast. There are two categories there. Of course, when we talk about the forecasting, when we talk about the types of forecasting, there are two methods of forecasting. The first one is quantitative methods, and the second one is qualitative methods. So they both are interrelated to each other, because all of the methods are also based on the time horizon, and it depends upon the short, medium, and long range forecast. Let's talk about what would be the difference between the short and long-term forecast. When we talk about the medium and long-range forecast, will always be used in most of the reputed companies, either most of the service organizations, like more comprehensive issues. Support management decision will always work on a daily basis, will always work on, just always keep on thinking about such issues, about the management decision, and of course it will goes on for a long period of time. Let's talk about the short-term forecasting, which usually employs different methodologies than the longer-term forecast. That's true, as I already told, when we talk about the scheduling, when we talk about the assignments, whether it's related to the jobs, whether it's related to the workers, it always use the different methodologies, so that whatever the targets, whatever the aims and objectives of forecasting related to these things could easily achieve, and always be in the short term forecasting in different methodology used rather than in the long term forecasting. In the long term forecasting, it could be difficult for the researchers to use the different methodologies according to the issues and the management decisions, or taking up the management decisions. Next is short-term forecast tend to be more accurate than the longer-term forecast. That's very true. When we talk about the short-term period, which is the less than or within the 3 months, it or the results, the exact results of forecasting always be a more accurate, and it shows the more accuracy than the long-term forecasting, as it takes a longer time and it could be wrong, it could be biased also. And of course, and all the forecasting, it's always been educated guessing, because or as we always think about based on our data. So data could be wrong, data could be right. So it could be true, it could be false also, it could be biased also, depend upon the wrongful judgments as well. So definitely it always talk about these differences, which are always based upon the issues, decisions, different methodology and accuracy level. So this is the difference between the short and the long term forecast. Now we talk about how to forecast. Why to forecast is already being discussed. So the next part is how to forecast. It could be forecast through the two methods. The first one is qualitative method and the second one is quantitative method. When we talk about the qualitative method, we always talk about the educated guesses. We always talk about the educated opinion. We always talk about the educated judgment. We're always based on the subjective in nature. In a under qualitative methods, it is useful, it is mainly useful when there is a lack of data, where there is no data available, and which a researcher can make forecasting based on that. For example, design and introduction phases of a product life cycle. It is in the product life cycle, it is very important to know, and the data is really equally valent when it comes to the new product life cycle, when it comes to the in design and introduction, because they always need a data. So when there is a numerical data and there is no numerical data, whereas when there is a lack of numerical data, then the qualitative method is very useful to forecast. The next one is quantitative method, which is very objective in nature and is based on the data and the numerical data, which are always being used for forecasting, whether it's related to the transportation, whether it's related to the military defense, whether it's related to the packaging, whether it's related to the marketing and sales, whether it's related to the finance as well. Everything needs data, and accordingly, the researcher forecast about the future on these departments. Now we talk about these are the methods, these are of course the approaches as well. So these are the two main approaches of forecasting. The first one is qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative is used when the situation is very vague and the little data exists. As I already told you, when there's a lack of numerical data, then the qualitative is the best method and approach to use. And for example, in case of new products, new technology, new development of a product, and there's a qualitative could be used if the data is not available. It also involves intuition and experience. Of course, it could be based on intuition and experience of a researcher, like forecasting the sales on the internet, forecasting the revenues on the sales of a new product. That's qualitative would be used because there is no data is available or a lack of data is available. When we talk about the quantitative forecasting approach, it is used when the situation is stable and of course there is a you can see existing data or historical data exists. It could be the new technology. Could be relevant to the current one, existing products where the old data is always available. Where the when you talk about the current technology, where the old data is historical data is also available. Of course, it's very true when we talk about the quantitative, we talk about the mathematical models, we talk about the mathematical techniques, we talk about the statistical models, where the forecasting is always being based upon in case of the qualitative methods or approaches. For example, forecasting a sale of a colored television, forecasting about you can say the about a new taste of a new product, Maggie. So here we talk about the new mathematical or statistical techniques and model, and because why it is because the historical data is exist in case of the new model about the Maggie. Existing data is always available about the different companies or related to the color televisions. So that's why in that particular perspective, the quantitative approach will be used. These are the various methods of the qualitative, and of course the pictorial form is already being shown on the screen. The executive judgment, sales force, composite, market research and survey in Delphi method. Delphi method is one of the most important method and most important topic for the examination, and of course to learn about this method for overall knowing the experience for regarding the forecasting. Executive judgment, sales force, and market survey in Delphi. Let's talk about one by one about these methods. So let's talk about the executive judgment. We always talk about the executive opinion. That is the panel of experts. That is the jury that they give a expert opinion related to the related to the managers, related to the employer in respect of their experience. So it involves a very small group of high level managers. It always, and such group is always estimate demand by working together. They always work together. Whatever the opinion would be, together. They combine all of the group experience using the statistical models like like you can say with whitening models. We talk about when we talk about statistical model. That for this relatively quick decisions, a quick opinion would be taken on regarding any issues or management decisions. Here we talk about the group thing is one of the disadvantages as well, because here in this particular perspective, here we talk about the collective opinion. We always it is always based on the what they have own experience, but it's not based on thinking. So whatever you have experienced, whatever your intuition which is based on your experience, that could be the advantage, not your thinking or not a group thinking would be an advantage. That's why the group thinking is a disadvantage in case of executive judgment or opinion. So these are the key points to elaborate in detail. The next one is sales force composite. In which we always talk about the salesperson, we always talk about the sales representative who think and plan with the few groups or with a group of one or two people, where so that how the sales of a particular project would get increased, and accordingly the forecasting to be done with the discussion of the two or three salespersons or sales representatives. So each salesperson's project his own or her sales. Definitely every salesperson has a responsibility to increase his or her sales. It always combined at district and national level. So whatever the sales in numbers has been achieved at the district and national levels, that could be combined, and accordingly will forecast about the sales for a future. Because in this particular type qualitative, the data is lack of data is available. So whatever the you can say a point of data is available related to the sales at the district and national level, that will be used for the forecasting. Sales representative know what the customer wants, what the customer needs in respect of a new products and a new technologies. And of course, and tends to be overly optimistic. Definitely, this is one of the quality into the salesmen that it should be overly optimistic so that the forecasting could be done accurately in whatever the data is available in respect of the sales of its own or a company product. Next one is consumer market survey. It's always, of course, it's very simple to understand. It always asks, it's a tool to ask the consumers about purchasing plans. What would be a plan of taking a decisions towards a new product? What the consumers says and what they actually do when they are purchasing a new product which is available on the stores, and of course their choice of differences would be the different, and sometimes whatever the questions will be asked by the investigator, it will be difficult to answer for the you can say respondent, because they don't know exact answers, what to answer, or they ignore to answer of a relevant question. So they ignore that question, they leave it as blank. Sometimes it could be difficult to answer the questions. For example, how many hours will you use the internet next week? So we always, the forecasting is always about the future. So it would be next week. Then what type of internet service would you use on the next month? So this is all about the consumer market survey. How many units of a product you will willing to take on a next week? So that's called the consumer market survey. This is one of the method. Here we talk about the group opinion. Here we talk about the decisions which are by serving a panel of experts. Surveys to be done on a panel of experts to get the opinion, to get their group opinion, to get a particular exact decision, so that accordingly the forecasting could be done. So Delphi method is a process used to arrive or used to reach at a group opinion, a decision by surveying a panel of experts. Here in Delphi method, the major role is a panel of experts. A researcher is surveying a questionnaire on from the panel of experts. They answer the questions of all of the particular relevant questions, whatever their opinion, whatever their views, their responses will be aggregated and accordingly shared with the group. So it takes in rounds, one round, second round, third rounds, until the exact group will reach to a true decision. So that's why the Delphi method is required. When a particular researcher needs a perfect decision, needs a perfect opinion, then accordingly they will prepare a questionnaire and just survey for a panel of experts, and accordingly it's shared with the group, and then thereafter a true decision would be taken, that what on whatever the final decision has been come up, what the group actually think upon this final decision, and that's called the Delphi method. So experts respond to several rounds of the questionnaires, and the responses are aggregated and shared with the group after each round. So whatever the round, it depends on the research. It would be one round, it would be two round, it would be three round. And every round, whatever the responses will be received, it will collect together and shared with the group. And the experts can adjust their answers each round and based on how they interpreted the group response provided to them. So it is a task of a group that whatever the experts, panel of experts give a response, they collect or combine the response together, and accordingly the group interpreted their response which is provided to them, that is group. And the ultimate result is meant to be a true consensus of what the group think. And the whatever the result would come, it always depends what the group thinks about the response or about the aggregate responses of the experts. So this is called the Delphi method. Delphi method was originally conceived in the 1950s by Olive Helmer and the Norman Declay of the Rand Corporation Limited. So this concept or this method is the oldest method which has been generated in 1950. So let's talk about the application of the Delphi method. It means the uses of the Delphi method, in which sectors this method is used. I believe in every sector this method will be used or has been used. In case of healthcare and medicine, the Delphi method is frequently used in healthcare to forecast about the future medical advancement, about the use of a new technology in the medical science in the future. Education. In field of education, Delphi method always helps in curriculum development, about the future needs assessment, about the policy formulation in respect of the education in schools and its education department. Business and management. Of course, businesses utilize the Delphi method for strategic planning, market forecasting, and identify whatever the critical success factors, and it can be done through Delphi method only when the questionnaires will take a round from a panel of experts, and that responses will be collected together and processed to the groups, and just ask from the group what they think about their responses, and accordingly the decisions for the future will be taken in each of the sectors, whether it would be healthcare, would be medicine or education, business and management, environmental studies as well, public policy, transportation, military defense and tourism, and hospitality. Environmental study, here the environmental researchers use such method to assess the risks related to the environment, predict the climate change impacts, and develop the sustainability strategies. The next one is public policy. This method always plays an important part in setting up the public policy, and whoever the policy makers will always collaborate with the panel of experts to create a comprehensive policy frameworks to tackle the complex issues like healthcare reforms or economic inequality, and you can see the GDP growth, the economic development of an economy. So on that basis, the public policy will be made up, and this will be made or formulated according to the or using the Delphi method. Transportation, what would be the transportation, you can say policies to be made up, what would be the military defense equipments or accessories will be forecast, what about the tourism and hospitality that could be done, and whatever the perspectives needs about related issues that could be done or decided by using the Delphi method. Next one is quantitative methods. Quantitative methods, when we talk about the time series tool, we talk about the regression tool. So here we are talking about the quantitative method. The first method is time series and regression. And time series and regression is one of the most important tool under statistics. Time series will always, it's a popular forecasting approach in operation management, especially the time series will always be used in marketing, sales and finance and product related activities. It is assumption based. Whatever the patterns are the changes that will occur in the past will always be continue to occur in the future. So whatever been occurred in the past, whatever the changes has been occurred in the past will also be continue to occur in the future as well. Patterns, it would be the random variation, trends, seasonality, and the composite. So pattern, it would be it changes randomly, whatever its trends, it changes according to the time period. Seasonability, it changes according to the weeks, month, quarterly, days, and composite, it's a combination of all. That would be seasons, it would be quarterly, it would be weeks. So it combine it all and just make use of time series and regression method. What is time series? Time series is obtained by observing any response variable at regular time period. If we talk about sales, it's one of the variable and it is a response variable, and of course it is forecasted on a regular time period, on a daily basis. It would be monthly basis as well, days, weekly basis, and that's called time series, where a regular observing about the changes, about the variations in the sales, and that's called time series. Set of evenly spaced numerical data. Of course, when we talk about the time series, of course there are plenty of data is available, or plenty of historical data is available. Forecast based only on past values. Of course, it also assumes that the factors which are influencing the past and influencing the present will continue influencing futures as well. So whatever the factors influencing past, the present will always continue to influence in futures as well, of relevant to all those factors which are influenced in the past. Assumed that it is assumption based. I already told in the earlier slide, it is assumes that the factors influencing the past will continue to influence the future. It is an assumption of forecasting also. So whatever the factors which already influence the past will also continue to influence the future as well. So this is a example of the time series, and this is a graph actually in the form of a line graph in the form of red dots, which is called parameters or the patterns or the changes, showing that how frequently and how randomly the changes occurred into the monthly sales. So these are the values has been randomly decided and based on the monthly sale and according to the time period like 12, 24 months, 36 months, 46 months, 60, 72 or 84. So these are the months has been given, and accordingly how frequently the sales has been changing according to the time, according to the you can see the values of the sales is changed. So this is the graph has been shown over here. This is called the time series graph, where the every segment on every single point of time, the sales or the values of the sales, it's changing, which is always been forecasting based on the historical data related to the campaign 6. Let's talk about the trend component. Trend component is always be persistence and overall upward or downward pattern. If the trends of a marketing, it goes on upward, it always goes on upward, and that's called the trend component. If the sale of a particular new product goes on downward pattern, so it always goes on the downwards only, and that's called the trend. And what type of trend it's going? It is always upward, keeps on increasing or keeps on decreasing, or in persistently balanced, we can say, neither increase or decrease, or persistence you can say sustained. So that's called the trend component. It could be the population, we can talk about technology, we can talk about the new electronic products, we talk about the television sets, we talk about here, and we talk about the social demographic variables like age, height of the population. So and that's called the trend component. So here we are talking about the response of a in this particular scenario, response of a medicines. So the response of a medicines is key, or the responses of the consumers is always going on upward. The more and more responses are coming up from the consumers to the companies or to the doctors, and that's called the trend component, which has been shown on the screen. And of course the trend component will always take up about the several years duration. It would be 3 years, it would be 6 years, it would be 8 years, it would be 10 years as well. So this is also the one of the example where the responses will receive on a monthly, quarterly and yearly basis, and where the trend is always shown on the upward pattern. So it keep on increasing, and of course this is a time series element. So time series element is always shows in a line graph, and it is not been goes on the straight upward line. It always goes in the patterns. It's up down, then again up down, and again it keeps on ups. So if we talk about the overall outcome of this graph in responses in respected of monthly basis or quarterly or yearly, goes on upward pattern. Let's talk about the seasonal component. Seasonal component, we always talk about the regular pattern of up and down fluctuations. So this is all about the up and down fluctuations due to the weather customs. Here we talk about the environment. Here we talk about the rainfall. Here we talk about the overall weather. Here we talk about the custom. Here we talk about the taxes, and that will occur within a year, or within a year or a year. And that's called, you can say, when we talk about in summer season, summer, winter, spring, raining season, here we talk about the responses, how the responses were received, or how the responses collected in the month of summer. This is called the regular pattern of up and down. The up and down pattern, it is up and down pattern means here the pattern is up, showing up and up, but on a regular basis. But when we talk about the trend basis, here the pattern is always a different, because it's showing an overall upwards in a trend form, in a pattern form. But here we are always talking about the regular pattern of up and down fluctuation. Here we are not putting up or down. Here we are putting up and down. So here is up, then again down, up, down, and that's a seasonal pattern, or a regular pattern of a particular season, whether summer, winter, or spring or rainy season. This is an exact example about the thousands of mile and the UK Airlines miles. So whatever this is an exact graph which has been shown of a time series, goes up, then down, up and down, then up and down in the respective months, and the values is already been given. So this is you can see, this is called the line which is shown a pattern, a regression line. And on the regression line, the seasonal component has been shown up, down, and that's called, and whatever the observe has been seen, it is an increasing trend, because it begins from the increasing and come up to the down, and that's a identification of a seasonal component. And it is a random variation, means the random changes. It goes up and again at the reaches at the peak point and immediately frequently down. So in the second month, then again it increases more, then again it down. So it's called the seasonal component. It's called the seasonal trend, I could say. And you can see the time series graph where the patterns is changes over the period of time, that is in dots. And when we talk about the regular up and down pattern, that's called the seasonal component, which is also shown on this particular graph relate to the UK Airlines miles. That is, in Indian we talk about the kilometers. The next is common seasonal patterns. It's very simple. We talk about the common seasonal pattern. Periods of pattern has already been given, that is week, month, year. Season length, it would be day, week, day, quarter, month. In a year, we talk about the quarters, we talk about the month, we talk about the week, and the number of seasons in pattern is already shown over here. When we talk about week 7, when we talk about you can say day, we talk about the 7 days. When we talk about the week, we talk about the 4 or 4.5 weeks. Day, it's 21 to 31. Why? Because February month it could be 28, it could be 29, and the highest date of every month would be, or most of the months is 30 or 31. So that's why it's written 28 to 31. Weeks would be 4 weeks, but sometimes it would be more than 4 weeks, some of the months. So it would be 4 to 4.5 weeks. Quarter, it would be the 4 quarters. Month, it would be the 12 months. Weeks, in the overall year, it would be the 52 weeks. So this is called the number of seasons in pattern, which is a basic calculation is to be done to check out how it is being calculated according to the seasons wise. This is called the cyclical component. It is repeatedly up and down movements. So repeated, when we talk about cyclical component of any of the factors which influence the growth of a country, which influence the growth of economy, like GDP, tax rate, growth rate, economic rate. So it always we talk about the cyclical component where the up and down movements. Here we are not talking about the up and down trends. Here we talking about the up and down movements, where movements we are talking about the red line. So this is a movement up and down immediately, and it is due to the interaction of factors which always influence the economy. And for the cyclical component, with the cyclical, you can say that trends or the movements is usually take up the 2 to 10 years of duration. So when we talk about, if you see the graph on the screen, so cycling means here we are just checking up the repeating pattern of up and down movements. How long the movements is repeatedly for a period of time. If we talk about the large, we talk about here the central cycle, where a longer period of time the cycle is increasing, and for a longer period of time the cycle of a component is decreasing accordingly, the number of months or quarters or years. So that's called the cyclical movement here, and which is shown on the red mark as well. The next one is random component. Here we talk about the cyclone, here we talk about the hurricane, here we talk about the union strike. Nobody knows that randomly the strike occurred into the factory. The strike occurred of a strike of employees occurred into a company or organization, and that's called the random component. Here we are talking about the erratic, unsystematic and residual fluctuation. It means the irregular fluctuations, irregular changes has been occurred, and that's called the random component. It occurred anytime, any unforeseen events, we can say in one of the example of the random components. So due to the random variation or unforeseen events, when nobody knows how, when and how it would come and attack into an organization indirectly, and that's called the union strike, hurricane and the cyclone. And it destroyed within a minutes, within a seconds, within a, you can say, destroy the whole company within a week as well. So that's called, it's one of the few identification. It's a short duration as well, and it's non-repeating. It's not repeating. It's non-repeating. A cyclone comes in a year. A recon comes in a 2 years, or in a, you can say, 3 years, or it depends. And union strike, it comes in a year. So that's why it's a short duration or non-repeating component, and that's called random component. Now we talk about the forecasting steps. Here we talk, first we talk about the data collection, then analysis, then model selection. It could be quantitative, it could be qualitative, whether you can use the various methods of the qualitative, the various methods of the quantitative, like time series. And the next one is monitoring. Monitor. You have to monitoring, you have to monitor whatever you have followed, then you have to monitor whether it's going in the right flow or not. So data collection is collect the relevant and valuable data, and always the researcher be aware what should be garbage in and what should be the garbage out. Whatever the irrelevant data is just out, and irrelevant data should always be in while collecting, or the particular data or the historical data, irrespective of any component variable. Next one is data analysis. Plot the data, identify the patterns. It would be the seasonal pattern, it would be the random pattern, it would be the sine time series pattern. So it depends that how you collect the data, how the reliable historical data has been collected, and how you plot the data, and accordingly you identify the patterns. It would be upward and downward pattern, it would be repetitive pattern, it would be non-repetitive pattern, it would be up or downward movements. So accordingly you have to plot the data. Next one is model selection. Choose an appropriate model for data. So obviously model would be the mathematical model, it would be the statistical model. So depends that what type of model would be used. And so when we talk about the this particular data quantitative, we always talk about the sine time series model, we always talk about the regression model, we always talk about the this called time quotation model, where these models will be used for the plotting the data and how the data to be analyzed. And after analyzing the data, these models will be used to check on that any complexity trade-off would be occurred or not. Then accordingly the forecast to be done. So once you choose the model, once you check on that any complexities issues would be there. So if there, you have to modify it and choose the correct model. And once you choose the correct model, and accordingly perfectly you can forecast about the future, or in respect of the issues, or in respect of the any revenues of a company or revenues of a new product. And accordingly, once you select the model, and of course you, in other words, you can say the selection of a perfect model is always based on performance measurement. So whatever the model you decide, that model will always be used to measure the performance of that particular product or technology. Next one is monitor. So once the forecasting has been done, and once you have took a step that performance is to be measured while selecting the perfect or correct model, then the next step is monitoring, that is track the forecast performance, that how the performance is going on after the forecasting. The conditions may or often do change, of course. Then to measure the performance, it is very important whatever the conditions has been decided for forecasting, it could be changed to measure the performance so that the results of the performance could be come up with a positive way, and that's called the overall forecasting steps. Time series models, there are short-term time series model. These are the four models. The first one is NAIF, short-term time series, simple moving average short-term time series, weighted moving average model, exponential smoothing model. So this is a forecasting example given to you where the L&K Bakery has been forecasting by gut feel, which is one of the tool of the quantitative according to the shop, according to the bakery, you can say bakes and cakes department. So they will like to use a formal forecasting technique. So these are the whatever the techniques has been shown here. These are the formal techniques, forecasting techniques of a time series model. So these are the months and the actual, you can say, the units has been given in the months monthly wise, and this is a graph has been drawn over here in January, February, March. So we have on the x-axis the 1 to 7 months has been indicated, and the actual production growth has been indicated on the y-axis, and accordingly the marking has been done based on the data given on the screen, that is 200, 300, which always begins, and always remember that whatever the graphs to be made on the case of time series, the time series graphs are always begin from the origin, that is O, not 0, it's O, right? This is the NAIF forecasting model. Suppose this is a question you have to forecast for the July, then actual for June, that is 600. So if you talk about July, that is 7th month, so obviously the forecast about the future is based on the past. So before July, the month is June. So 600 units would be the answer of the forecast for July month. And forecasting is very sensitive to demand changes, and of course good tool for a stable demand of a production of a product units. This is the moving average method. Here you need to forecast for July. So moving average method stands for, if you want to calculate of July, then of course of the past historical data, if you talk about the 3 months moving average, and you need to calculate the forecast for July month, then moving at the 3 months moving average would be June, April, May, and June. So if you want to calculate the forecast of April month, then the 3 months moving average model would be used. Then would be January, February, March. So once you total the actual demand, the values, the numerical data, and divide by 3, as we have to calculate the 3 months moving average of a particular month, then you will get the July month value, that is a forecasting value, that is 500. So in this particular question, the formula is given about the moving average. If you have to calculate the 3 months moving average. So if you calculate the July month, then you have to consider the historical months, that is April, May, June, 3 months. Add the values, divide by 3, you will get the answer forecast demand, actual demand, that is 500. And if you want to calculate the forecast for April month and applying the 3 months moving average, then you have to consider January, February, March, add the value and divide by 3, you will get the exact answer of a forecast for April month. So of course the values are equally weighted and good also for a stable demand, and of course it's fluctuation and lags are very sensitive in case of moving average. That's all for today. We'll continue the other few methods which are very important in the next session. Thank you to all and namaste to all. Goodbye.